"Your pension ends today, Mr. Dawson." Derek Cole said it loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. 2 customers turned around. 3 tellers looked up. Even a woman near the door stopped walking. Harold Dawson stood at the counter with his hat in his hands, 68 years old, clean shirt, work boots polished for the trip. Cole adjusted his tie and glanced at the screen. Men your age often forget what they signed. Harold said nothing. He looked at Derek Cole for 4 long seconds, then placed his hat back on his head, turned, and walked out. One teller watched him leave. Her name was Margaret. She had seen angry people, desperate people, broken people. But something about Harold's silence made her hands stop moving. Harold sat in his truck without starting the engine. 40 years of pension deductions, 40 years of early mornings, bad winters, sore backs, and missed holidays. Erased in less than a minute. He finally started the truck and drove home. Ruth saw his face before he spoke. She looked from him to the kitchen table. 3 medicine bottles, 1 unpaid bill, $340 due in 7 days. "They stopped the pension," Harold said. Ruth stayed quiet. "What do you mean stopped?" "They said I was never enrolled." She stared at him for a moment, then nodded toward the basement door. "Go check the toolbox." The basement was cold and dim. A single bulb hung above an old workbench his father built years ago. In the corner sat a red metal toolbox covered in dust. Harold knelt down and opened the latch. Inside was a folded yellowed paper. He opened it carefully. First Valley Bank, Pension Enrollment Form. March 14th, 1974. Signed, stamped, active. Harold reached deeper into the box. Old paycheck stubs, one after another. Each one carried the same line. Pension contribution deducted. Every month, every year. Every payment the bank now claimed never existed. Harold closed the toolbox, carried it upstairs, and placed it on the kitchen table. Ruth looked at him. Harold met her eyes. They lied. Derek Cole had been branch manager for 7 months, long enough to learn one thing. Older people rarely fought back. First Valley Bank had been bought by a company called Meridian Capital. New owners, new rules, new targets. Every quarter, branch managers were rewarded for cutting what the company called legacy costs. Old pensions, old accounts, old promises. Derek Cole was very good at it. Last quarter, his bonus was $4,200. The quarter before that, $3,800. He knew exactly which accounts to target. Records that were old. Files with missing records. Customers who lived alone. People too tired to argue. He had used the same line before. Men your age often forget what they signed. Most of the time, it worked. What Cole didn't know was this. First Valley had kept its pension records on paper for years before computers ever arrived. Boxes of files sat in the basement archive, unopened, ignored, and Harold Dawson's name was inside one of them. 3 weeks earlier, Cole had reviewed Harold's digital account. Nothing appeared before 1989. So he marked the file unenrolled, approved termination, and moved on. It took him 11 minutes. 11 minutes to erase 40 years. Harold was the 15th pension account he had cut that quarter. Cole was already thinking about number 16. Across town, Harold sat at his kitchen table. The red toolbox rested beside him. Documents covered the table in neat rows. Ruth read each page carefully and placed them in order. Year by year, contribution by contribution. Finally, she looked up. "Harold, this is everything." He nodded. "So what are you going to do?" Harold kept his eyes on the 1974 enrollment form. Signed, stamped, active. "I'm not calling the bank," he said. Ruth frowned. "Then who are you calling?" Harold thought for a moment. "You remember Sarah Odom?" "The Gazette." He nodded. "Cole embarrassed me in front of a room full of strangers." He picked up the enrollment form. Now he can answer in public. Ruth looked at him quietly. She had known this man for 41 years. The Clarkfield Gazette had been printing local news for decades. Small office, 2 reporters, 1 tired editor. Sarah Odom was 34. She grew up in Clarkfield, left for college, then came home. She covered school board meetings, town budgets, road repairs, and stories most people forgot by dinner. But she knew this town, and she knew when something mattered. Harold called her that morning. They met at a diner on Route 9 an hour later. Harold placed the red toolbox on the table between them. Sarah looked at the box, then at him. "Open it," Harold said. She spent the next 40 minutes reading every page. Enrollment forms, pay stubs, contribution records, dates, signatures, stamps. Twice she went back to the first document. Finally she looked up. "How long did you work there, Mr. Dawson?" 40 years. "And they told you there was no record?" Harold nodded. "In front of a full lobby," he said. "Loud enough for everyone to hear." Sarah tapped her pen against the table. "I'll call the bank for comment," she said. "They'll deny everything." "I know. This may not go far." Harold leaned back in the booth. "I'm not doing this to go far," he said. "I'm doing it because a man stood in public and acted like 40 years of my life meant nothing." Sarah studied him for a moment. Then she closed her notebook. "I'll have it ready by Thursday." The story ran, Friday morning. Bank erased farmer's 40-year pension. He had every document, the paperwork, the timeline, and 2 witnesses who heard Derek Cole in the lobby. By noon, it was the most read story on the Gazette website in years. By 3 o'clock, the comments had started. "This happened to my father. Same bank. Same excuse. My husband fought them for 2 years. By 5 o'clock, Sarah's phone would not stop ringing." Harold was sitting on his porch when she called. "Harold, listen carefully," she said. "I've had 11 calls today. All retirees. All First Valley Bank. All the same story." Harold looked across the field in front of his house. "How many?" he asked. 11 so far," Sarah said. "And the night isn't over." Harold was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think I need a lawyer." Sarah exhaled. "I think you needed one yesterday." Harold ended the call and stared at the setting sun. He had gone first. Now the others were standing up. Frank Solis had practiced banking law for more than 30 years. He was 63. Small office. No receptionist. Stacks of files everywhere. The kind of lawyer who had stopped being impressed by banks a long time ago. Harold sat across from him that Monday morning. The red toolbox rested on the chair beside him. Sarah's newspaper article lay on top. Frank read the article, then the enrollment form, then 6 months of pay stubs. Finally, he looked up. "How many calls did the paper get?" 19 by Sunday morning, Harold said. Frank nodded slowly. "And you came here alone?" "I came here to win." For the first time, Frank smiled. "Good answer." He leaned back in his chair. "This is not one case," he said. "This is 19. He tapped the newspaper. "1 filing, 1 judge, 1 very bad month for that bank." Then his expression changed. "But I need more than paperwork." Harold frowned. "The documents prove they hurt you," Frank said. "I need proof they meant to." He folded his hands. "I need someone on the inside." Harold thought for a moment. Then he remembered the teller whose hands had stopped moving. Margaret Tillis had worked at First Valley Bank for 19 years. She knew every form, every system, every shortcut. She also knew what Derek Cole had been doing. In 7 months, she had watched him target account after account. Older customers, retired customers, people unlikely to fight back. She said nothing, not because she agreed, because she had a mortgage, a daughter in college, and a manager who knew exactly how to threaten people without ever raising his voice. When Sarah's article ran Friday morning, Margaret sat in her car outside the bank for 20 minutes before going inside. That night, she called the number at the bottom of the story. Frank met her 2 days later. She brought no papers. She didn't need to. She remembered everything: Cole's quarterly bonus, the pension terminations, the accounts chosen by age, and a private spreadsheet on his laptop. 31 names, oldest customers first. Harold Dawson was number 15. Frank wrote notes for nearly 10 minutes without stopping. When she finished, he set down his pen. "Will you testify?" Margaret looked at her hands. "I watched that man humiliate Harold Dawson in front of a lobby full of people," she said. "I should have spoken then." She raised her eyes. "I'm speaking now." Frank nodded once. "One more question," he said. "Is that spreadsheet still on his laptop?" "As of last Friday," Margaret said. "Yes." Frank picked up his pen again. "Good," he said. "Then we're going to ask a judge to save it before they erase it." 3 weeks later, Frank filed the lawsuit. 19 retirees, more than $2 million in claims, and a court order request for every record tied to Derek Cole. The bank responded in less than 2 days. Fast. Too fast. Frank read their response, then smiled. They already knew what was on that laptop, and they were terrified someone else was about to see it. The hearing took place on a Thursday morning in April. Federal court in Nashville. Small room, wood-paneled walls, American flag in the corner. Cole arrived with 3 lawyers, pressed suit, perfectly combed hair. The same confidence he carried into every room. He never looked at Harold. Harold sat beside Frank Solis, hands folded, hat resting on the chair beside him. Ruth had ironed his shirt that morning. Judge Patricia Warren entered, reviewed both tables, and took her seat. "Let's begin." Frank stood first. "Your Honor, we submit the following evidence." He placed Harold Dawson's pension enrollment form on the table. March 14th, 1974. Stamped, signed, active. Then 19 pay stubs spanning 4 decades, each one showing the same line. Pension contribution deducted. Then the records of the other retirees. Same bank, same deductions. The bank's lead attorney stood quickly. "Your Honor, these are unverified legacy RICs." Judge Warren cut him off. "Those documents carry your client's stamp and signature." She looked over her glasses. "Are you telling this court your bank's own records cannot be trusted?" The attorney sat down. Frank pressed play on a recorder. Cole's voice filled the room. "Your pension ends today, Mr. Dawson." Then another line. "Men your age often forget what they signed." The room went still. Judge Warren never looked at the device. She looked at Cole. Frank stopped the recording. "Your Honor, that statement was made publicly by the manager responsible for terminating all 19 accounts." "Continue," the judge said. Frank opened another folder. "Under this court's order, we received Mr. Cole's internal emails." He handed copies to the court. One read, "Flagged 6 additional legacy pension accounts, on track for bonus target." Another, "Good work. Keep pushing." A third, "Dawson account termination complete. 15 down. Moving to next batch." Judge Warren lifted the page slowly. "Mr. Cole," she said, "when you wrote 15 down, were there 14 before Mr. Dawson?" Cole's lawyer began to stand. "Sit down," the judge said. She never took her eyes off Cole. Cole swallowed. Before he could answer, Margaret spoke from the witness stand. "There were 31 names, Your Honor." Harold Dawson was number 15. Judge Warren set down her pen. She looked at the emails, then the enrollment form, then Derek Cole. "Your bank called this a system error," she said. "But your manager received bonuses for these terminations." She held up the email. "This was not a system error." She paused. "This was a system." No one moved. Judgment for the plaintiffs. All 19. Full pension restoration. Damages to Mr. Dawson totaling $340,000. Class settlement exceeding $2 million. She closed the file. I am also referring this matter for regulatory investigation. Then she looked at Cole one final time. Mr. Cole, I suggest you get your own lawyer. Court adjourned. Derek Cole was placed on administrative leave that same afternoon. By the following Monday, he had resigned. Within weeks, regulators opened investigations into Meridian Capital. The spreadsheet was at the center of all of it. 31 names, listed by age, tracked like a sales target. Cole's bonus program was shut down across every branch. 12 additional pension accounts were identified and restored. Frank Solis called Harold on a Tuesday morning. "The check is being processed," he said. 60 days, just as ordered. Harold was quiet for a moment. "And the others?" "All 19, Frank said. "Same timeline. Nobody gets less than what they were owed." Harold nodded. "And Margaret?" Frank let out a small laugh. "She accepted a consulting job with the banking authority yesterday." Harold sat back in his chair. "Good," he said. Frank was quiet for a second. "Harold, I've been doing this for more than 30 years. Most people in your position never fight back. They're embarrassed. They're tired. They assume the bank has more money, more lawyers, and more time." He paused. "And usually, they're right." Another pause. "But you had a toolbox." Harold looked toward the basement door. "My father built that bench in 1961, he said. "He never threw anything away." "Smart man," Frank said. "Yes," Harold replied. "He was." 3 days later, Harold drove back to First Valley Bank. Same parking lot, same glass doors, same lobby, but Derek Cole was gone. A young teller smiled as Harold approached. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today?" Harold placed a folded paper on the counter. Ruth's medical bill, $340. The same bill that had been sitting on the kitchen table when all of this began. "I'd like to make a payment," he said. The teller processed it and slid the receipt back to him. Harold folded it carefully and placed it in his shirt pocket. "Thank you," he said. Outside, he sat in his truck and made one phone call. Ruth answered on the second ring. "Bill's paid," Harold said. There was silence. Then Ruth laughed softly. "Get your coat," Harold said. "I'm taking you to dinner." Harold sat there for another moment. An old truck, a paid bill, a receipt in his pocket, and his wife laughing on the other end of the line. Some battles are fought in courtrooms. This one started in a basement, with a toolbox, and a man who kept the truth. Harold Dawson didn't make the news. No television interview, no viral moment, no picture in a national paper. Just a man who kept every document his bank ever gave him in a red metal toolbox beneath a workbench his father built in 1961. Derek Cole spent 11 minutes on Harold's case. Harold spent 40 years earning it. That's the part people miss when stories move too fast. Not the courtroom, not the money. Just a 68-year-old man sitting in his truck, receipt in his pocket, hearing his wife laugh on the phone. That's what winning looks like. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. There's another story like this every week. And if you knew someone like Harold, leave a comment below.